Are promotions always a win? What if I told you that accepting a promotion could actually cost you your happiness and earnings? Stick with me because the truth might surprise you. Think about it. Whenever a promotion comes your way, the instinct is to grab it, right? More money, a shiny new title, and the feeling of leveling up in your career. But what if I told you that, for about 60% of us, saying yes to that promotion could be the quickest way to sabotage your future, earning potential, and even your overall happiness? Sounds crazy, right? Well, here's the kicker. It's all tied to something called the Peter Principle, a concept that explains why climbing the corporate ladder can sometimes be a trap. But this isn't just some outdated corporate theory. It's a reality that still affects millions of workers today. Here's the kicker. It's a proven fact that explains why so many bosses are, let's say, less than effective, and more importantly, how you can avoid falling into the same trap. See, if you climb the corporate ladder without a plan, you're bound to reach a point where you simply can't perform at the level required. And guess what? Saying no to that next promotion might actually be the smartest career move you make. After years of diving deep into labor economics and corporate dynamics, the data paints a pretty clear picture. Too many people are promoted for all the wrong reasons. The typical mindset is to treat your career like a video game. Level up, earn rewards, and eventually defeat the final boss. But here's the truth. The higher you climb, the more the game changes. You're no longer in the role of a sniper in a first-person shooter. Now you're stuck managing resources, juggling spreadsheets, and making decisions that have little to do with what made you successful in the first place. If you're a rockstar sniper but can't manage numbers to save your life, that promotion? It's a trap. Let's get into the hard data. Take a look at a massive study on sales teams that absolutely proves this point. And don't worry, I'll also give you a step-by-step framework on how to turn down a promotion without it looking like you've given up. It's all about mastering strategic stagnation. But before we dive into the mechanics of why staying in your current role can be the smartest move, I want to remind you, this channel is all about making money and career decisions based on rational, data-driven analysis, not emotions. If you're tired of making decisions based on how good they feel in the moment and want to make choices that actually increase your long-term success, hit that subscribe button now. Trust me, it's the best ROI you'll get all day. Now, let's talk about the guy who coined the term for why your boss might be, well, less than effective. Back in 1969, a man named Lawrence J. Peter wrote a book meant to poke fun at corporate bureaucracy, but it ended up becoming a cornerstone of management theory. The main idea? Simple, yet brutally effective. Peter argued that in any corporate hierarchy, every employee will inevitably rise to their level of incompetence. Here's how that happens. You start off in a job, and you're great at it. Naturally, your performance gets noticed, and boom, you're promoted. Now, you're in a more demanding role. You buckle down, learn the ropes, and once again, you become good at it. And guess what? Another promotion. This cycle continues. Competence leads to promotions, and eventually, you land in a role that you might not be good at. Maybe the skills required are totally different. Maybe the pressure is just too much. Whatever the reason, your performance starts to slip. And here's the catch. This is where the Peter Principle kicks in. Once you hit this point where you're struggling to keep up, the promotions stop. You're no longer in line for a raise or new title because, frankly, you're no longer excelling. But, and this is key, you usually don't get fired either. No, you get stuck. You hang out in this role that you're fundamentally bad at, stressed out, and unintentionally blocking anyone else from moving up. The system is set up to push you out of the roles you're good at, while ensuring you stay permanently installed in the one you can't handle. It's a brilliant mechanism that efficiently turns your competence into incompetence. Let's take a look at a classic scenario. one that plays out constantly in tech and engineering. You've got a brilliant software engineer, someone who writes cleaner code than anyone, solves complex problems without breaking a sweat, and is a true wizard when it comes to architecture. Naturally, the company wants to reward this person for their excellence, so they promote them to engineering manager. On paper, this sounds like a smart move, a higher rung on the corporate ladder. So, but here's the problem. The role of an engineering manager isn't about writing code. It's about managing people. It's about resolving conflicts between developers, attending budget meetings, navigating the politics of the product team, and writing performance reviews. In other words, it's all about soft skills, empathy, diplomacy, and handling administrative tasks. But here's the kicker. Our brilliant engineer might have zero aptitude for any of these things, and now they're in charge of tasks they don't excel at, struggling to adapt, and facing a reality where their technical genius doesn't help them manage people or navigate the political landscape. This is where the Peter Principle truly comes to life. Suddenly, the company has lost its top coder and gained a mediocre manager. Everyone loses. You might be thinking, sure, Tom, but I'm smart. I can learn. I'll figure out the management stuff. That's the optimism speaking. But the data says something else entirely. In fact, we have solid empirical evidence showing that companies consistently destroy value by promoting their top performers into roles they're not equipped for. If you think you're the exception, then you need to take a look at the numbers from a study involving 53,000 workers. This study proves that high performance in one role actually predicts failure in the next. A few years ago, researchers published a paper in the Quarterly Journal of Economics called Promotions and the Peter Principle. They wanted to determine whether this principle was just an anecdote or a real phenomenon. To find out, they analyzed data from over 200 companies, focusing specifically on salespeople and their managers. Sales is a great field for this kind of study because performance is measurable. Either you hit your targets or you don't. The results? A clear pattern emerged. The single most reliable predictor of whether a salesperson would be promoted to manager was simply their sales volume. If you sold a lot, you moved up. Seems fair, right? Reward the high performers. But here's where it takes a turn. The researchers didn't just stop there. They dug deeper into what happened to the teams these newly minted managers took over. And that's when things got ugly. The data revealed a shocking truth. The better someone was at selling, the worse they were at managing. In fact, there was a negative correlation between sales performance and management success. The superstar salespeople, who were promoted based on their individual achievements, led teams that actually performed worse than the teams led by average salespeople. So why does this happen? Because selling is a lone wolf activity. It's all about aggression, individual focus, and sometimes a little selfishness. Managing, on the other hand, requires the opposite. It's about empathy, collaboration, and the ability to motivate and guide a team. Managing requires the complete opposite of selling: collaboration, coaching, and patience. But by promoting their top sellers, these companies were pulling their highest revenue generators off the floor and putting them into roles that, ironically, actively harmed the performance of everyone else. It was a double whammy of value destruction. But the study didn't stop there. It also identified the qualities that actually made for a good manager. It wasn't the top sellers, but rather the salespeople who had a track record of collaborating on complex deals, even if their individual numbers weren't the highest. These individuals, who excelled at teamwork and navigating the nuances of business relationships, were the ones who truly had the potential to manage effectively. Unfortunately, they rarely got promoted because the system was blinded by the flashy metrics tied to individual performance. This isn't just a coincidence. This highlights a fundamental flaw in the way we think about talent. The Peter Principle isn't just an anomaly, it's a structural problem in how we assess and develop leaders. We often assume talent is vertical, that if you're great at level 1, you'll automatically excel at level 2. Ciao. But the truth is, talent is often horizontal. Just because you're elite at one level doesn't mean you have what it takes to succeed at the next. There's a deeper layer to this concept, and it comes from a Stanford working paper that treats this as a statistical problem. It's called regression to the mean. Here's how it works. To earn a promotion, you typically need to have a spectacular year. You need to blow your targets out of the water. But here's the catch. Performance is a mix of both skill and luck. Sure, you likely had the right skills, but chances are you also had a bit of luck on your side. Maybe the market was booming, or you landed a huge client. When you get promoted based on that peak year, something critical happens. Statistically, your performance will likely regress back to the mean. In other words, your performance will tend to drift back toward your average after that lucky streak. But now, here's the kicker. You're in a harder role. So, not only are you facing the natural drop-off from that lucky streak ending, but you're also dealing with the added difficulty of your new position. To your bosses, it might look like you suddenly became incompetent. In reality, the promotion system just selected you at your peak moment and set you up for a statistical correction. Most people picture their career as a ladder. You just keep climbing, rung by rung. But I want you to completely delete that image. It's dangerous. Instead, I want you to imagine your career as a graph. On the y-axis, you have your competence, how good you actually are at your job. And on the x-axis, you have the job level. For most of us, that line doesn't just go up forever, it forms a specific shape. And here's the problem. If you don't know where that drop-off point is, you're going to walk right off a cliff. Now, imagine this graph in your mind. At level 1, let's say as a junior analyst, your competence starts off low but rises quickly as you learn the ropes. By level 2, as a senior analyst, you're in your zone. This is your zone of genius. The tasks match your skills perfectly and your competence line is high and steady. You're crushing it. You feel confident and at the end of the day, you go home feeling useful. But then comes level 3, management. Suddenly, the tasks change and the line on our graph starts to dip. At this point, you're no longer doing the analysis yourself. You're managing the people who are doing it. You're okay at it, but not great. Then comes level 4, director. Now, the job is all about politics and strategy. Your competence line crashes. You're drowning. The real problem here is that the corporate ladder only goes up. It forces you to move horizontally across the x-axis from left to right. But your actual skills, those things that made you valuable, are represented by a horizontal line that cuts across the graph. As long as the job stays below that line, you're good. But the moment the job requirements move above your skill level, you enter what's known as the Peter zone. And here's the tragedy. We actually celebrate entering the Peter zone. We throw parties for it. We update our LinkedIn profiles. We're literally celebrating the moment we become worse at our jobs. But here's the rational move, the one that no one talks about. Look at that graph. Identify where your competence curve peaks and stay there. Camp there permanently. That's the sweet spot. This leads us to the risk-reward calculation. Every promotion is a trade. You're trading your current comfort and mastery for potential status and money. But you need to ask yourself, is it worth it? But here's the catch. You're also taking on new risks. The risk of burnout, the risk of being fired because you can't deliver, and the risk of absolutely hating your life because you're stuck in endless meetings all day. If you plot expected utility, which is essentially happiness plus money minus stress, you get a hump-shaped curve. For the first few promotions, the money outweighs the stress and your utility goes up. But then comes the tipping point. For many people, that tipping point hits at the role of senior individual contributor. Beyond that, the extra 20% in salary often comes with a 50% increase in stress and a high probability of failure. This creates what's known as negative expected value. A rational investor would never make a trade like that, and yet we do it in our careers every single day. Now, let's say you've done the math. You've looked at the promotion offer, reviewed the tasks, and you realize it's a trap. It pushes you beyond your level of competence. So how do you decline it without wrecking your career? You can't just say, "No thanks, I'd rather be lazy." You have to approach this strategically. The first step is what I call the skills audit. This is where you sit down with your boss and separate pay from the role. Most of us want the promotion because we're focused on the raise, not the actual job. So, the conversation has to pivot toward how you can continue to add value and get paid for it without changing your core responsibilities. What you want to push for is a senior individual contributor track. This is becoming more common in tech, but it's negotiable in almost any industry. You might say something like, "I'm honored by the offer, but after evaluating where I provide the most value to the company, I've realized it's in doing the work itself, not managing others. I want to double down on being the best specialist you have. Can we explore a path where I take on more complex projects, mentor junior team members, and receive a compensation adjustment, all while staying in this current role?" What you're doing here is framing your refusal as a commitment to excellence. You're protecting the company from making the mistake of promoting someone into a role they're not suited for. You. And here's the kicker. If they push back, if they say the only way to get a raise is to become a manager, that's a massive red flag. It shows that the organization doesn't understand what really creates value. Declining a promotion? That's one of the ultimate power moves. It signals that you know exactly what you're worth and what you excel at. It shows confidence and independence. You're saying, "I don't need a title to validate my abilities." And ironically, people who remain in roles they truly excel at often end up with more job security than those who are constantly climbing. The climbers. They're expendable. Why? Because they're often operating on the edge of their incompetence. On the other hand, the person who is the best at their core technical work is bulletproof. During layoffs, it's the middle managers who get cut. The people who actually build the product or sell the service are the ones who usually stick around. The Peter Principle. It's real. The data backs it up. The sales study proves it. Regression to the mean predicts it. If you blindly say yes to every promotion, you'll eventually find yourself in a role you don't understand, doing a job you hate, just waiting to get fired. The smartest person in the room isn't necessarily the CEO or the director. It's the person who climbed to the exact height where they were happiest and most effective, and then had the discipline to stop climbing. They maximized their utility, not their title. That's how you win the game. If this perspective has shifted how you think about your career, do me a favor and hit that like button so the algorithm knows this is useful information. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever seen someone get promoted to their level of incompetence? Or have you ever turned a promotion down yourself? I read every comment to gather real-world data points. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.